guys, we are here at Adepticon 2016, and yesterday a big thing happened, and that is the release of Star Wars Rebellion. We were on the road when that happened, but here we are with Eric Roos, flight crew for Fantasy Flight Games, and we're going to get a real demo of this thing. So for those of you guys that are unboxing it for the first time, you're checking it out, you're about to play through it, this is it. Look at it, and then if you're interested in this game, we're going to get more about it, so stay with us. Eric, kick it off, man. Let's start with you. You played this more than a lot of people at this point.
Yeah.
Tell me, last thing I heard about Star Wars Rebellion was at Worlds 2015, and it was, this is the Star Wars game that we have always wanted to play. Like, it's big, it's epic, it always changes. Tell us about Star Wars Rebellion. What's your favorite thing about this game? What have you noticed?
Yeah, Star Wars Rebellion is it really captures that narrative feel that you get from any Star Wars movie, really. Those key moments where the leaders or the heroes of the movie get to do the really cool stuff that you always wanted to do.
Amazing, yeah.
So, I mean, from running in with the Millennium Falcon to save a captured leader to Luke training with Yoda at Dagobah, like, you can do that in this game, and that's really the cool stuff.
And then sometimes you do completely different stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, in this game you write your own narrative, basically. So you don't have to blow up Alderaan with the Death Star. You can go to Kashyyyk and blow that up instead. It's totally up to you.
Wow.
So
fantastic. Well, let's dive in. Let's see how this thing works. Give us a little rundown here.
Yeah. So the main component of the game are these leaders that on the leader cardboard on their stand, basically, they've got little symbols down there which correspond to missions. Missions are the core mechanic of the game. They're how you get things done. Those symbols are going to be found on the mission cards, and you need to match the leaders up with that in order to execute them properly.
All right, so like here's the mission card, gather intel, right?
Correct. So you might want to send...
Here's one of the symbols.
Yes, so that symbol is for intel. You might want to send Wolf Yularen on that mission. In this case, if he were to be opposed by a rebel player, he'd be rolling 3 dice, 1 for each of his symbol on that card. So in the assignment phase of the game, you assign any and all of your leaders that you would like 2 missions. Then you alternate back and forth, starting with the rebel player actually trying to execute those missions. I did mention opposing missions. Let's say Wolf Yularen tried to gather some intel, but the rebellion sent Princess Leia to stop him.
A classic play.
In that case, each side would roll dice equal to the number of that symbol that they have on their little cardboard stand. So Yularen would get 3, Leia would get 2. Which, if the person attempting the mission got more successes than the other side, they would win.
Excellent. Let's talk about these. Let's talk about these dice. So obviously we have a blank here. Let's use these red ones. They're nice. We have a blank here. There's a lot of blanks. So two blanks per side. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then we have a bunch of hits. It looks like.
Yep.
So tell us about that's a normal hit.
Yeah. So that would be a normal hit right there. This one here, that's a direct hit. So in combat, each unit has a certain health color. Dice of that color can only damage that health color. So Y-Wings or bombers, they roll red dice. The red dice hurt the capital ships. However, if something gets a direct hit, that could go to either side, either health. So that way there's a little bit of cross damage.
Oh, wicked. Okay.
Yeah. And then...
Yeah, the Jedi thing. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, so this one right there is the special symbol. In missions, the regular hits and the direct hits, those count as 1 success, so you use the same dice for missions as combat. In missions, the special symbol counts as 2 successes, so you really like those.
Wow, nice.
However, in combat, they have a little bit of a different ability. Depending on your leader's stats, you're going to draw combat cards, or tactic cards they're called. And they have certain abilities, either blocking damage, re-rolling dice, some other effects, but some of them, if I can find one here.
So these are kind of like hitting the community chest in Monopoly, you know what I mean?
Correct, yeah. So in this case, you'll have cards to start. These can either let you draw more cards, or they can activate really powerful cards in combat to really get you to do the cool things.
Wicked. All right, so we have that kind of mini understanding of how the mission system works. Now, I guess it's worth mentioning, how does one win or lose this game?
Yeah, so the main goal of the Imperial side is to find the Rebel base and destroy it. The way they do that is by moving across the galaxy and sending ground units to planets to look for it. Once a ground unit enters a planet, the Rebel has to say whether or not their base is there. And they've secretly chosen their base at the beginning of the game and have set the card aside, so they can't lie, they can't cheat.
So on one of these planets, there's a Rebel base.
Correct.
And the Rebels choose that at the start of the game.
They choose that at the start of the game.
Okay. And then when an Imperial troop moves to that planet, the Rebels have to say,
They have to
we're
declare.
here.
Yep. Or
Oops.
not. Yep. The other way that the Imperials can look for the Rebels is through this probe deck. During every refresh phase at the end of the round, they're going to draw 2 more probe cards, which will, by process of elimination, reveal planets that have not been selected for the Rebel base.
Can we see what's under here?
Yeah.
Okay, so like, if I draw a Hoth probe card, you have to tell me at that point if you're on Hoth.
No,
or not?
you know that the Rebels are not at Hoth because they have their probe card already out here. So the Imperial player keeps those secret. The Rebel doesn't know what has already been probed.
Wow.
Later in the game, if the Rebels try to move the base, they only get choices from what's remaining in the probe deck based on a draw.
Very cool. All right, so there's the mini mechanics. Obviously, there's 2 to 4 players in this one, right?
Correct, yes.
So somebody's playing Imperial, somebody's playing Rebel.
Yep.
Can it be like 1 versus 2, 2 versus 2?
Yeah, so the rulebook does go through scenarios for 3 players and 4 players. In a 3-player scenario, I believe it is 2 Imperial players against 1 Rebel player. And then in a 4-player side, it's 2 versus 2.
Nice.
The rules do go through who does what in that scenario. They break up responsibilities between each side. Essentially, it boils down to one person's the Admiral and one person's the General. The Admiral is going to do the space-related stuff. The General is going to do the ground combat-related stuff.
That is really cool. I love that. All right, so what's the general flow of this game? Can you run us through a kind of a standard turn?
Yeah. So the main thing you're going to want to do, especially as the Imperial players, you're going to want to move around on the board. So let's say that the Imperial player wants to go to Kashyyyk because they think the Rebels are hiding on Kashyyyk. So they're going to take one of their leaders from their leader pool over here.
How about Tarkin?
We'll say
like
Tarkin. That sounds great. So we're going to put Tarkin in Kashyyyk. So Tarkin moves out to Kashyyyk. He is then able to take units from anywhere adjacent to Kashyyyk and move them in. In this case, both Mandalore and Seleucami are adjacent to Kashyyyk, so we're going to go ahead and move some stuff in here.
Just go and throw the Death Star.
Yeah, Death Star
there,
coming to Kashyyyk. Those Wookiees better be careful. Each space unit has a carry capacity, which correlates to how many ground units and TIE fighters they can carry. The Rebel fighters have hyperdrives. They don't need to be carried. They can go out on their own.
Wicked.
So the Death Star can carry 8. That's enough to get everything here. So we'll go ahead. We'll pull it all in. But you know what? That might not be enough. Those Wookiees can be fierce. So let's get this Death Star coming. The Death Star can carry 6, which again is enough for everything here. So it'll move in too.
Boom. So we've got a Death Star. We've got a Star Destroyer. We have. I mean, this is like as thematic as it gets.
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah. So at this point, what happens is we've got these markers here on planets showing which planets are loyal to which faction. That can change based on mission cards that are played by the leaders. That's the main way to gain loyalty. However, just the Empire showing up at a planet, they have to show some force. They're going to take, if you want to grab one of those markers over there, they're going to put the Stormtrooper side up. They've now subjugated this planet. So the Rebels no longer get any benefit from Kashyyyk, and the Empire gets some benefit, not as much as if they made it completely loyal, but they're going to get to build off of it using the build symbols here in the build phase.
So this is basically like they're sympathetic to the Rebels, but they got to keep it quiet.
Correct.
Because the Stormtroopers.
Yes, it's still loyal to the Rebels. So if the Rebels were able to kick the ground forces off, if they were able to bring a force in here and defeat all those Stormtroopers and ATSTs, they would then unsubjugate it and it would become loyal again. It would still remain, but it would then get a benefit of it being loyal.
Excellent. All right, so you move your troops around,
Yep.
and then do the Rebels have a chance to do something? Is that
when units move on the board, they do not. However, if we were to come over here and if the Naboo units moved into Rhodia,
yeah,
in that case that would initiate a combat. So let's say Palpatine himself is going to move some units over.
Uh-oh. That's usually trouble.
Yeah, so in this case, we'll bring everything. Actually, yeah. So these Gazanti carriers are in the game also. They can carry 4. So we've got enough to bring everything over.
And now we got ourselves some old-fashioned combat.
In this case, the combat would initiate. And since the Rebels do not have a leader here, they would have a chance to send one of their leaders to go lead that combat.
Okay.
In this case, Han Solo is probably the best leader over here to lead a combat because he's both balanced for space and ground. That is indicated by the numbers at the very bottom of the leader card. The blue number is how many space cards they get to start, and the orange number is how many ground combat cards they get to start.
Okay.
And once a combat's initiated, starting with the aggressor, each side rolls dice back and forth, alternating between space and ground. So you do 1 round of space, 1 round of ground.
And then we remove things from the board as they're destroyed?
Sort of. So each side, it's simultaneous combat. So within 1 round, both sides will get to roll all of their dice, whether they're destroyed or not. Then destroyed things are removed from the combat.
And how do we determine how many dice are going to be rolled in this kind of a combat?
That's going to be on your card that's in front of you where you're next to your leader pool. So each unit has its own chart. The square numbers, the numbers in the squares, black or red, that's how many dice of each color they roll. The numbers in the circle is the health value they have, and the type of health it is, either black or red, indicating what type of damage needs to come at them.
So if, let's say you roll, 3 red damage, do I then get to decide?
The attacker then decides what units it gets applied to.
The attacker decides.
However, because each side can have these tactic cards, they might block damage. So there would be incentive for each side to maybe pile up damage on the one unit they really want to put down.
Right. So kind of like shields or any other mechanic where it's like, yeah, you can try to just get this guy knocked off, but generally you're going to want to pile on some damage.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and so then we have this combat. Now, after a round of combat, do we have a chance to retreat, or are we fighting until this thing is over?
So after one round of space combat and one round of ground combat, so you're required to do one round of each.
Yeah.
Each side would have a chance to retreat as long as they have a leader in the system. If the rebels never sent Han Solo to that combat because they were going to save him for something else, they can't retreat. They're stuck there until the Empire decides it's over.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
I feel for those rebels. And so then they can probably, go to any adjacent planet?
So when they retreat, they have to go to a planet that is either under their control or has a unit there. So in this case, actually, removing all ground units from Naboo actually immediately unsubjugated Naboo. The rebels have been liberated there. So the Empire couldn't go back to Naboo because it's loyal to the Empire. They could go to Malastare, though. They could come up to Tatooine. If the rebels were to retreat in this case, they could choose between any of the 3 that are loyal to them.
Wicked. All right, and so we have some movement, we have some combat, and then how do we kind of go to the next round? Is there anything else that has to be done, taken care of before we move on to the next round?
No, each side alternates back and forth, starting with the rebel until both sides either use all of their leaders or decide to pass. If they had assigned missions and they decided not to do them, they just come back to their hands. They'll get a chance to try them again the next round if they choose.
So this is an incredible, giant Star Wars strategic party.
Yeah,
is what it sounds like to me. So you've got to balance using your leaders for missions.
Yep.
Or for blocking your opponent's missions.
Correct.
Or putting them on planets.
Yep.
Moving stuff around, defending stuff. So how you use your leaders and get them on the board, is a very important decision every single time that you make it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That seem fair?
Yeah, and each round starts with an assignment phase where you have to, at that point, assign all of your missions. So before anything else happens, you're deciding how you're going to use your leaders that game.
So if you assign all 5 to missions, then you've got nothing to go help your troops out.
You've got nothing to go out on the board. Everything would be assigned. Your opponent would be able to freely execute all of his missions.
Wow. Well, that sounds incredible. So once we get all this done, how does this track move?
Yeah.
And then how do we refresh everything?
Yeah, so at the end of the round, after you've each side has passed or used all their leaders, we go to a refresh phase. All of the leaders out on the board are returned to their leader pool. Any leaders in the missions that weren't used would also return. And then from there, each side would draw 2 new missions from their mission deck. So they would get 2 new missions to add to their hand. However, they can only have 10 cards in their hand at a time. So if they exceed 10, they got to choose some that they're not going to attempt.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of a balance there.
So they grab those missions.
Yep. After that, the Imperial side gets to launch probe droids. They're going to draw 2 new probe guards from the deck.
2 probe cards. Boom. They don't show them. I keep these secret.
You would keep them secret from the Rebel player, yes. So you would now...
So I know they are not on Hoth or Yavin. Good to know.
After that, the Rebel players would get to draw a new objective. These objectives are how they move their reputation further towards ending the game.
And those objective cards, basically, as they're completed, the Rebels get to move their dial. They get to move this thing
Correct,
down.
yeah. So they've got a value up here, some text with how they're accomplished, and then that value is how much reputation they were gained, moving their marker down towards the turn marker.
Wicked. And so the flow that I'm getting here is, as the Rebels are completing these objective cards, this is moving.
Correct.
And then every turn, this is moving up, every round.
So after we draw objectives, the next thing we do is this moves down. And then there are some symbols on this time track. Those symbols indicate a couple things. The medal is that each side will get a chance to recruit new leaders. To recruit new leaders, you're going to grab 2 cards from your action deck, which is this deck next on the other side of your little placard. Each card is going to have pictures of leaders along the bottom. Those are the leaders you have a chance to recruit. The card also has special text. That's an ability that leader is going to get that you could use it when, basically when it would apply. If this one would be at the start of combat with Akbar or Maydeen. So you would choose if you want Akbar or Maydeen, add him to your pool, get that card, and you would discard this card with Wedge.
Okay, so we get to constantly recruit new leaders
yeah.
too.
Yep, that happens until round 5. The other symbol on every even round is this, I'm not even sure what that is, but it's the build symbol. So it allows each side to build units based on what planets are loyal to them.
Excellent. Wow. And so then if this ever happens, you know, if the rebels get here,
as soon as the time marker advances or the rebels move it down to the time marker, the game ends and the rebels win.
the rebels win. But if the rebels are just kind of piddling around, the Empire has plenty of time to
More
come
time
find them.
to narrow down where the rebels are at and plan the destruction of their base.
Well, Eric, this sounds just really, really cool. I've heard that this is kind of a condensed and distilled feel of like a Twilight Imperium big game, but it's more like kind of synthesized and a little bit easier to get into than that.
Yeah.
And of course, it's Star Wars all over.
Oh yeah.
You can't deny that.
For sure.
So thank you so much, man.
Yeah, no
Appreciate
problem.
taking
Thank
a
you.
look. This is Star Wars Rebellion, a new board game, and I am so intrigued by it that hopefully we can get a copy or something and play one ourselves. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Adepticon 2016. We got more coming.